everybody. I'm Raza Malik. Welcome back to another episode of Same Shit, Different Day. I'm featured with my two amazing co-hosts, starting off first with my partner in crime is the main man.
You're not gonna say my name? Bayley Nargang.
No,
My name's Bayley Nargang.
Yeah. And then literally the person who carries this entire endeavor on her back like a god, and featuring the amazing, the well-rounded, the most well-versed person I've ever met in my entire life.
It's Wine Mom.
It is Wine Mom. It's Wine Mom.
Oh,
And
man.
this week we are talking about our lives post-Rona, post this pandemic and stuff. So I'll bring this out to the floor and say, has any of your lives changed? Have you guys done some self-reflecting? Have you guys grown? Or if not, has nothing changed? So I will open it up and say, either one, take the torch and say whatever you would like to say.
This is a tough one.
Significantly.
Yeah, because both of us have like significantly fucked up our lives.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's good content. There you go.
I mean, so I guess for myself, yeah, it's significantly changed. I'm home all the time. I went from working, basically 6 days a week because I never had time for myself, long hours, to just being like at home with my cat, which is a lot. And as far as like self-improvement stuff, yeah, I do therapy now because it's been much needed thanks to this pandemic.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Bailey?
For me, lifestyle change wise, it was a big evaluation of like what are my priorities because I have no social life going on. But mainly, like my bread and butter, I've always been like doing my little hustle. Is like event photography was my shtick, so I lost all of my primary income. So it was a big evaluation of like not only what's important to me, but how do I want to move forward through the pandemic, because I'm someone, I'll work a random fucking job, I'll go mow some lawns, I'll go build some IKEA for some money, that don't matter. It's like, what do I want to do after this now that I lost everything? Because I didn't mind, event photography was just like a means to an end, because I enjoy capturing people's like candid enjoyment, but it's not like my shtick. Like I'm not like, oh, I really want to go to an event and like capture photos because that makes me passionate, So fortunately, I stumbled into this, and now look at us. And if anything, what I really like about it is the pandemic like really set me up for the future, because now I know how to do all the things I really want to do in the future in a remote capacity.
Jesus. Okay, so like you both have very good things going on, and I hate it so much because things change, right? I was a freelance journalist going into the pandemic, so mans wouldn't leave the house much. Man was just be in front of his computer, writing away, and then the pandemic hit. Mans said, "What else is new?" Right? So, my life, talking to Bailey when this first happened. He was going like remember he was telling me, oh, I don't know what I'm gonna do, I don't know, this is actually freaking me out, and I was looking at my life and be like, it's so different, because like literally even as I'm telling you this right now, my life hasn't drastically changed. Nothing has okay, I have gotten a little more fatter, but
Oh my god.
no, but
you
like,
have to admit, like, you don't do the same things you used to do outside of the home, even when you, like, the little bit of times that you could do them.
Yeah, like
you don't go drinking and partying anymore, if you ever did do that.
My, like, being at home with 3 other people, that changed because my sister got stopped working because of the pandemic too, so she was at home too, and my mental health was just and is like slowly deteriorating, but like not like how it's bad or anything, but like I am taking up new things. I'm like going out for walks more. I'm spending more time away from a screen and actually like this pandemic sort of like grounded me kind of, but like I'm at home. I have all this going for me now. I just need to prioritize what I is good, and then or prioritize distractions and stuff, and
Right.
it'll just slowly get better.
Well, I think like also a big thing for me is like thanks to this pandemic, you really learn like who your friends are, who is valuable, like who values you. And I've really been able to like learn how to ignore people, which is something I've never really been able to do, because I'm the kind of person that like if somebody texts me or calls me or needs something for me, like I physically don't know how to say no. I don't think I've ever said no to anyone. So it's like
Mhm.
I was always like overreaching myself to somebody for something. And so now I've just become more like my time has just become more important to me. So now when
Mhm.
people are like, "Oh, I haven't talked to you in so long," I'm like, "Cool, you've had a year off just like me. You could have called me or texted me at any time, so I'm
Yeah,
good."
I've had the opposite of that. Like people are actually trying to reconnect with me, old friends and stuff,
Hmm.
and that's also like yeah, that's also helping me like deal with this pandemic when I
Yeah,
have issues
I,
of already. So sorry, Bailey.
yeah.
no, I was just gonna say I find myself losing my social skills completely though. I'm like struggling to maintain my ability to like communicate publicly, and that is like my job. That's difficult. It's weird because even I won't get the specifics of my job going, but I had a meet up with like someone I work with, and we were both chuckling because we couldn't look each other in the eyes. We're like having a
Oh,
full
No.
really?
conversation. And it's like, hey, yeah, well, we got to do this, and like, hey, you got to do that, and then we got. It's just we could not sit there and make eye contact.
That's pretty funny.
But it was just
Well,
like a
and
big like, wow, we're both hit by this. Like that seriously impacted
yeah.
us.
Well, it's
Sorry.
definitely like no, it's okay. It's definitely forced me to like look at the way that I interact with people, and like it's weird because it's like there's a lot of things that I did previously that I felt like was a lot of like going through the motions,
Hmm.
and now that I have so much time, I don't want to do that motion. Thank you. I'm not going to do it. And it's like being at home, and I will say like the excuse of being like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, it's a pandemic, like my circle's already full," is legit my favorite freaking thing. Like I love telling people, "I'm so sorry, I can't hang out with you." Like
And then
it's
there's
a pandemic.
it cut to wine mom in her apartment giving avocado belly rubs and
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
No, that's, no, because like I like okay, and the other thing I want to talk to you guys is like how
Mhm.
has it been impacting you mentally and stuff? Like how is it like how is it? How's your
Yeah.
game?
Um I think for me personally there was a lot of things that happened in my life the year leading up to the pandemic,
Hmm.
and all of it I swept under the rug. I didn't think about, I didn't deal with it. Like, Bailey's known me long enough to know that, like, I don't talk about my feelings, my emotions, my thoughts, my opinions. I keep 90% of the stuff in my life to myself. And
Hmm.
so, with all this free time, like, I went from literally never having any free time. Like, the only little bit of time I had, I was running around downtown with this friend or that friend or doing something for someone. And so,
Hmm.
I've been forced to be alone with my thoughts a lot more. And so, yes, it's been really dark, but it's also forced me to go, okay, you can't live like this anymore. And if you don't
Yes.
start dealing with what's going on in your head and like getting help and addressing it, and like it's, and because of that, like now I don't take shit from anybody. Like I
Mhm.
never really took shit, but now I don't take shit at all. Now I'm just like, fuck you, my mental health matters more than your fucking opinion. Like I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
I'm gonna just, this is done. Like, and
Mhm.
I think whereas it's really highlighted all the darks, it's really encouraged me to like deal with them and get past them and be stronger mentally for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I also liked I do like being alone sometimes, but like
Mhm.
this pandemic, like like it put me in my head
Mhm.
a lot, and I didn't like that as much because like I like since the pandemic started, I've been getting like my anxiety has been getting a little bit more
Mhm.
intense and stuff. So, like this lonerness and stuff, I was afraid of because like
Yeah.
I have been sort of alone, a little social circle all my life, but this pandemic like literally took everything like socially away from me, and that
Definitely.
made me feel more vulnerable and more like scared if I'm gonna like 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 what happens if I don't wake up tomorrow. But I don't want to talk about that. But so
Right.
Jeez, jeez, this
I
whole
know.
other level. But no, I do relate. I mean, like that's when I was talking about having to figure out what I want to do. It's about those passions. Like it sounds
Yeah.
dinky, and then well, you might see it on the channel soon. But I started my reselling stuff of like collectibles and all the antiques, and it was something I always had a passion for. But like being pushed into the pandemic and being put into your head was really like, okay, like, what am I doing all this shit for? And why am I
Yeah,
doing all this shit? Because it's not just about money and fame, you know? Like, why do I want to put so many hours
yeah,
into this when I'm reminded of my own mortality here?
Right.
dude. It's so weird. Like since the past 3 weeks, I've been having a hard time sleep. I wake up in a sweat, like the last like 3 weeks now because it was like I like there's days where I'm like like sitting there. I'm like I can't deal with this anymore. Like I cannot be alone anymore. And then I just start
Mhm.
texting people arbitrarily. Nobody responds to me though. But it just shows that like as what Wine Mom said, like prior to the pandemic, everything she swept under, like you swept under the
Yeah.
rug, right? I did that too, and then all of a sudden the demons start to come out because the rug is like stuffed.
Yeah. Well,
So like
that's why,
that's
like, I really made the decision. Like, I really thought about it for a while of like whether I was going to try and self deal with my issues, and
yeah,
ultimately I decided like it just wasn't gonna work. And
yeah,
I was like, I have to go to therapy. Like, it's just not a option anymore. Like, now I have the time where I can commit myself to doing what needs to be done. And it's hard for me to be vulnerable, even though it's like a business type setting. It's not really. It's an therapy is intimate, but it's an exchange of a service, right?
yeah,
Which
yeah,
makes it easier for me to be able to like, okay, this is part of like the service that we're exchanging. But it's a new level of honesty with somebody in my life, like telling them the truth about the things that go on in my head. It's scary and it's really hard to do, but I feel like if I didn't do that, like that was going to be the last straw for me. And this
yeah,
pandemic really highlighted that for me. And it was like either you're going to do this and you're going to get better, or it's never going to change, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I wish I could do the whole therapy way, but I'm like afraid of therapy because like
Don't
I
be
hear a
afraid.
whole. I know I
Yeah,
shouldn't be, but like
you gotta just hop in.
I
Yeah.
know, but like the things I've seen and I hear is just like an issue that I've deal with is just like you don't want to hear the things that are real. So like I know if I go to therapy, they'll say this is wrong with you, this is wrong with you, and I
Yeah.
don't want to hear that. I already know what's wrong with me. I need solution and stuff. But like
Yeah.
that's the other side. Like therapy will first identify it, and then it'll give you
Well,
Well,
I
you
the
think
see,
I
I
think you
see
should
it.
try again and
Yeah,
look into
I
it
agree.
again.
Cause like
what.
that's a similar problem to like I know me and Wine Mom both face the same thing. Is like the
Hmm.
barrier of having to retell your whole story. Like there's been a
With a
whole
stranger too,
fucking
yeah.
Yeah.
movie's worth. I've gotten over that. I could tell a stranger my story, but you gotta buckle in because this man's cost like $200 an hour, or whatever, $125 an hour. It's gonna take me like 4 full hours to be able to tell
Sessions.
what the shit happened in my life. Like, you cannot fit that
Yeah.
into one little thingy. So that's like the biggest
Yeah.
pressure I have in terms of therapy. But when it comes to that, it's like when that person's repeating what you said, like, that's not something to be too scared of, because it's like you essentially told them what the feelings were
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
That person is then validating that they exist, and like, even though it costs money, that information is valuable, you know.
So yeah, I agree. But like to me, it's like a personal thing. Like I don't do well with criticism. Like I do kind of well with criticism, but like to a certain point. But like when somebody says this is else, like a stranger, like you and like you two can tell me that I'm messed up, and I'll be like, okay, holy shit, I gotta listen to them. But when a stranger tells me that there's something wrong with you, I'm just like, I get hella uncomfortable, because like, yeah, I told
Yeah.
them, but like I know these things are uncomfortable, like
Right.
are wrong with me. I don't need you to tell me things that I know, right? So like I understand, like, yeah, it confirms everything, but it makes me hella uncomfortable when when a therapist is like saying, okay, this is why you have your panic attacks. This is why
Right.
you're stressed out. Like, I know. It's just weird that you're saying it, because
I
when they're
think,
saying it, it's
yeah,
like it's official. Like, it's serious
yeah.
when they're saying it and stuff.
I
Yeah.
think, Raza, like, if you're genuinely wanting to do therapy, right? If you're genuine about the idea of getting help, whatever idea you have about what therapy is, just
Mhm.
get rid of it, because it's
Yeah, no,
not what you think, right?
yeah.
And it's like there's different forms of therapy, and based on like the conversation that we're having here, I can tell that you don't want diagnosis, you need confirmation. Like, you need someone to say, absolutely I understand, absolutely I hear you, absolutely I see you. And so
Yeah.
I think what you should look at is CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a little bit different than traditional talk therapy, which is like a
Okay.
whole nother discussion for us to get into. But
Now I'm
my
scared.
point is, right. But my point is like, the same thoughts that you're expressing right now is literally the reason why I didn't go to therapy a year and a half ago. It's literally
Okay.
the reason why I was like, I refuse to have anybody tell me what's wrong with me, because I know what's wrong with me. I know what my
Yeah.
issues are. But having somebody hear you say what you're saying and go, absolutely, you're correct in the way that you feel. Yes, you're correct in the things that you're saying. Yes, that makes sense. No, you're not crazy. Is a
Mhm.
totally different feeling, because it's something
Yeah.
that, like, because you know what's wrong with you, but you've never had anyone say, I hear you, I see you, I understand, absolutely. Here's how you work on making it better.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I'm a huge advocate for therapy. I think, everybody should do it. I think you should do relationship therapy, group therapy, family therapy. I think everybody should be doing
Oh, yeah.
some form of therapy, honestly.
Yeah. I just, like therapy. Like, I look at therapy as a like a relative thing. Like, if you need it, go and get it, 100%.
Yeah.
Don't push that off. But like, not everybody. Like, I think not people.
See,
A lot of people who go through therapy, I hear sometimes they do one session and they're like, I don't understand why I'm here. But then I hear on the other side, they're like, I need this. This helps me out. Like, this helps me
Yeah.
deal with my issues. So like, I would like to do therapy, but like, I would like to also be in a comfortable headspace to do it. Like, I can,
Right.
where I don't feel judged and stuff. But like, again, therapy to me, it just shows that you're human. It just shows that you're like,
Yeah.
there's
well,
like you. Yeah.
like,
Sorry.
I used to think very similar. I used to be very stuck on the similar path of the idea that it's a very tactile service, right? I'm paying
Mhm.
for someone to solve these problems, right? But at the
Yeah.
same time, like, using that same tactile analogy is one of the reasons I came to terms with it. Like, you're gonna hire a professional, a consultant, a teacher, a tutor. There's many different services in the world that, like, you're gonna find the person who's like the best at their job to do something, and your mental health is another
Yeah.
thing that's just as important to you as hiring a personal trainer. So rather
Yeah.
than going to some dude who went to college for 2 years to learn how your body moves. You're going to someone who went to college for 2 years or 4 years to learn how to listen, and that's what they're paid to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what it kind of contrasted in. It's like, I was very similar in the stubborn fuck, but it was like, look, if you're willing to prescribe that other people's professions have a higher skill level than yours, why can't I respect the skill level of the therapist?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'll tell you, when I was 16, my mom made me go to a therapist. She was like, you're doing this, you're going to go through this, we're going to this woman, you're going to talk to her about stuff, and we're going to figure it out. Yeah. I didn't want to go, and I went, and I walked out of the room, and I said to my mom, I hate her, I'm never coming here again, I don't ever want to do this, it was the worst experience of my life, this is so stupid, like, I'm never coming back here, don't make me come back here. Mm-hmm. And, like, sometimes that needs to happen for you. Sometimes you need to meet someone and be like, okay, this person didn't work with me, but the therapist that I'm with now, like, I love him. Like, I've never felt more safe with a person. And, like, it's just a simple conversation that we have with each other, but it's like, that person makes you feel safe. And it's definitely important to, like, don't be afraid. Like, if you don't like a therapist, you don't have to go to that therapist. You can change. You can try somebody new. Like, sometimes the first person you're with is not always the perfect fit, right? That does happen. So that's why you get those stories of people saying it wasn't great.
I literally, the first time I went to an agency of therapists and wrote a cover letter and then had a discussion about, like, what type of therapist would be best for me.
Well, that's like, that's not personalized, though. I find that's like
it's pretty personalized.
It was very personalized. It was like, these are my problems and these are what I'm looking for help for. So I'm looking for a specialist in this and this. And they're like, oh, well, we've got a therapist that deals with childhood trauma and sexual therapy, and then we've also got a therapist that deals with, like, emotional trauma and physical therapy and blah blah blah, right? So then you're, like, able to narrow down, and then you're given their bios, and then you're like, they'll give you more information on them if you ask. So it's like way more selective, honestly. I really enjoyed it personally.
Mm-hmm. So, like, and I also think because people are thinking like this, because, like, therapy was considered like a taboo up until, like, recently, right? So, like, if you went to, like, how you said, your mom took you to therapy at at 16. Yeah, you wouldn't be able to do, like, you would be able to do it, but there would be a lot of weight. Like, what's wrong with her? Is she suicidal or something? Like, it would always be these questions. Now it's because people, unfortunately, in our generations, we are messed up, right? So, we need therapy, and now because there's more messed up people in our generation, therapy has become sort of a thing. But
I think that's, like, okay, so first off, pre-nomer, because I do think you're a good guy, and it's like, I don't think you believe that, but it's also I think that's the change of tense, though. I don't think it's that our generation needs therapy now. I think society and the world is in a place that normal. We can access, and that is normal.
That's what I'm saying.
Right? That's what I said.
Like,
okay. I just want to clarify. It's an important point to be
the example that Wine Mom said, like, how she could do it at 16. Like, you wouldn't be able to, like, you could do it, but, like, the connotation that came.
It was the mental gymnastics that I couldn't get through. I was like, the whole idea of, like, because even still, like, you know, I had a lot of things that I went through as a kid that I just wasn't ready to talk to anyone about. And I mean, even with my current therapist, there's lots of things that I still haven't talked about, and I don't know if I will, but it's just the idea of, like, being able to be vulnerable where it's important, or where I think that I can get some sort of help or some sort of direction or some sort of tools to figure it out, right? But you know, my mom went through a very tumultuous time with her own mental health, and I watched her go through so many different formats of therapy, and being able to watch her, who, like, my mom is the strongest, bravest person I have ever met in my life. Like, there is no penetration there. You cannot tear that person down. But to watch her go through all of those things and, like, struggle and then inevitably get better was something that I was like, why can't I do that? Like, and I should do that now while I'm young enough before I have, 2 kids and I'm, in my 40s and I hate everything and I can't get better, right?
Yeah.
You just gotta push yourself to go,
Yeah.
it's worth it to do it now. And if it doesn't work, at least I tried and I did it, right?
And like, and I think this, like, our parents think that, like, since they're in that age group, they can't get better. Like, they're stuck, which they're
Right.
not. But like, they think they're
I
Exactly.
had a weird experience. I had a mix of both with my parents, right? I had one side, which was similar to Wine Mom's here, is that I was sitting there, my Pokemon experiences, bruh. I had to spend like 6 to 10. I was
Wait.
I was in a therapy
Pokemon?
waiting room playing I was in a therapy waiting room playing Pokemon and eating Cheetos and chips from like a vending machine. So it's like I had a weird early exposure because my mom was going to therapy like when I was a fucking kid, and I didn't understand what was going on. I just knew we went to talk to this person who talks to people, like, and it's Pokemon time. But like having that experience as a kid, like really like familiarized, like, hey, this isn't that weird.
Yeah.
Like I met their
Well, it
therapist,
breaks
and
the
their
barrier.
therapist was a normal human. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Then versus I had the other one, and I recommend that, Raza. If you ever run into issues, like explaining it to your family, like with my hick-ass family, I use that trades example I brought from before. Like, you're gonna hire the best person at like a specific task for your house and repairing yourself. Like, why not hire the person that's the best at listening?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, it's like, it's funny to me how, like, as a society, we can look at someone with a drug addiction or an alcohol addiction and we can go, they need mental health, they need an institution. Because, like, when you send someone to rehab, you're not sending them to a place to just stop doing drugs or stop drinking alcohol. You're sending them to a place where, like, they have to their feelings. It's a whole thing about, like, a mental thing about getting better. And, like, even my dad, who was an alcoholic for most of my life and went through the process of getting sober, like, hearing him talk to me about what it's like to, like, go to because he went to AA, which is a form of, like, a group therapy, and for him to talk about, like, all the things that he was able to learn about his own brain through that process, like, if he can do it, like, it's possible, and it may work for you, and it may be something that's good and feels good. And I think anybody who's listening right now, like, it's worth it. Like, it seems like a lot at first, but, like, even for short periods of time, like, small amounts of therapy, just, like, some tool to, like, understand your own mental gymnastics is better than any gift anyone can give you, honestly.
And, like, interesting that Bailey brought up the talking to your parents stuff, because I can relate to that heavily for 2 reasons. Parents and cultural, right? Like, mental illness in my culture is like you don't have it. It doesn't exist and stuff. And if you have it, there's something wrong with you and stuff, or there's something wrong with your parents. They didn't raise you right. So, like, being a person of color and like specifically in the like Pakistani Muslim community, and where this conversation doesn't really happen, it's hard to find these avenues which you guys have in your own words are hard. It's easier to find it's easier to find so many people in your own community because it's been it's now okay, like, people are comfortable with talking about it. In my community, it's just like it doesn't exist. Like, like,
no,
it's
I get
your parents' fault.
again. I get that. Like, it's my country ass family is in the same realm of, like, what do you mean? Like, what are you saying? Like, you need to go,
what are you saying?
Go to shrink?
You mean
you need to go to shrink?
Smack you on the head or something?
Why do you need to go to shrink? And then it was fine. It was, the skills kind of work, but I do get you. I'm not trying to white splain or say
No, it
that's.
doesn't matter. You always are going to.
I just mean that the stigma is very nuanced and complicated, and I think the stigma crosses much more borders than just cultural. Like, I think it's a very societal thing to have the stigma around therapy.
Yeah. Like, my one cousin, he's the first therapist in our family and stuff, and he just people, relatives don't understand what he does.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I'm
because
thinking,
it's right. But it's also because like, so even like in one of my first sessions with my therapist, like he asked me, he's like, "Do you have support in going to therapy?" And I said, "Yeah." Like, luckily enough, like my family is pretty supportive of that. And he was like, "Yeah, it's very common for people to not understand that sometimes there's something wrong with you, and it's a genuine fear, and it's every family member. It's a genuine fear that they are the reason why you need that therapy." And he's like, they don't want to hear that they did something wrong or something was wrong, and that's a lot of the time why there's such a pushback and there's such a fight about it. But sometimes people just feel things because they feel things. It doesn't have anything to do with your parents or your childhood or anything like that. Like, staying inside for an extremely long period of time and not being able to socialize and live your life in the way that is comfortable for you is more than enough of a reason for you to be having some mental distress.
mhm,
And,
100%.
it doesn't always have to be someone's fault that you need help,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wish the Daisy community. I'm calling you out, the Daisy community. I wish that community could see it that way, but they're like, no, it's your
Yeah.
parents' fault. It's how you're raised. It's
Yeah.
you should have been married at the age of 18, and your depression would have just gone away magically at the age of
Do it in
18.
secret, Raza.
Just
I know it's not ideal, but do it in secret and like you'll feel better.
Yeah.
Because of the
100%.
topic, I won't like name the human, but I had a similar like cultural issue with event planning that I was working on with my mans, who you both may tie the dots after. But it's like I got my buddy who's a Rasta man, right? And so he was trying to hold a concert and have an MC there, and the MC was trying to talk about like community issues, and he went around. This man, literally, this Rasta man started going on a rant about how it's like the therapist is the R word. Like, the therapist is there to the R word your brain. And we're like,
Okay.
whoa.
Boy.
Whoa. Okay, bro.
By R word, you mean rearrange? Maybe.
Yeah.
I think you mean the other one.
Yeah.
Reprogram your thoughts, maybe, but like,
So
what?
it's like this big cultural thing of like we had to somehow like me and the homie were standing there like how do we appropriately like and my homie's of the culture, so it's like how do you appropriate like you gotta shut up, you can't be saying that, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, like I had this similar discussion with somebody of how like a therapist is there to just get into your brain and then start to control how you think and control your emotions, because once you're in, this is how their train of thought worked, but they said once you're in control, the depression goes away, the problems go away, which no, not you, if somebody else is like if it's like not you being
not that
in control,
no,
but like
you being
when
in
somebody
control
else
of your own thoughts,
once you have control of your own thoughts, like worlds, like it's a world of difference. But the argument that the person was saying was like a therapist is there to control how you think and feel, and I don't like that. I'm just like, that doesn't, I mean,
that's not
yes
at all.
And no,
like
because it's
that's a psychologist. There's a whole I think that's another misconception in society.
Yeah.
That's another too nerdy rant, but a lot of people have this big misconception of the difference between like a psychologist, a psychotherapist, and a therapist, you know?
Right. Yeah. I think like, so to just kind of like to give you an idea of an exercise that I've done with my own therapist is like, I'm a very reactionary person. If I reach a certain level of anger, there is no conversation. I'm gonna just rip you apart. I'm gonna do whatever I need to do to like, get my point across and then exit the situation immediately. I just get very quick to a rage. And I had a situation with a family member that and instead of getting enraged in that situation, I chose to just like bottle it up and just ask them to leave my home, and that's where I ended the situation. So later I sat down with my therapist and I explained everything to him, and I said, I tried my very hardest not to get into a rage, and all I did was tell them to leave my home, but really what I wanted to do was get into a rage. And so the exercise that we had was just a breakdown of like, what is the situation? Why did the situation happen? Is it avoidable? What were your emotions? Which ones were moods? Which ones were thoughts? Which ones were feelings? And help you like realize why you're escalating to the level that you're escalating, right? Which, when you think about it in the context that I'm saying it in, you're like, okay, well, that's dumb. Like, I know all the answers. But when you actually sit down and they discuss to you, like, the difference between a mood and a feeling and a thought, then you're like, oh, okay, I understand how all of these things are starting at something small and then growing to another thing and then another thing. And you take all those small things and you smoosh them into one big thing, and then you become reactionary. And so in the instances like what I'm doing with him is I'm learning to like slow down and process each step of the emotion before I reach a limit of rage. And like learning how to deal with like, how do I navigate around that feeling of like instant rage? And instead of being like, I'm so angry, I'm going to lash out, instead of going, okay, I'm upset, I'm just going to take a minute, process what has just happened and readdress it later, right? And that's just one exercise that I've done with him. But there's so many other exercises as well that you'll do, and it's just like small things just to help you. Like, it's about stopping your emotions where they are and like basically like talking with your emotions and with yourself and like breaking down the things that are happening so they're more understandable pieces that you can overcome and process and get better and deal with them easier, right? And that's just one aspect of the things that I have, is that I have a rage issue, right? There's other things as well, but it's like that's an easy thing for me to, based on, because it was an event that happened the day before I spoke with him. The day after, I was over it because I had the chance to sit down with him and like truly understand why I felt what I felt, right?
Yeah. That's like pretty much how I think people should deal with situations, because people we're too, like, what's the word you use?
Reactionary.
Yeah. So people, I wouldn't say just that. People are also hella irrational too. Like, we act out, and so
absolutely.
I do like that strategy that your therapist gives you, because like it does make sense. You want to slow down. You want to look at what you're being mad at. Yeah.
Exactly.
Or,
I mean, ask Bailey. He's known me since I was like, I don't know, 15, 16. So he's seen, like, I can be reactionary, and like now that I'm older, it's just not for me anymore. I don't have the, like, it takes more, the way that he put it, he's like, it takes more emotional energy for you to feel the full extent of your rage than it is for you to stop, pause, think about it, process it, 100%. And then address it later.
100%. My mom says that all the time. She's like, it like, you are using more brain power to get angry at this, because then you're thinking about it, you're focused on it. But then once you're over it, it just goes over you.
Yeah, like I'm fine talking about this aspect of my personal life of like, that's like with my partner. Like, that lesson was the biggest lesson to learn. Of like, yo, it's okay to be like, I need a second to think about this and walk away from the shits and then come back 5 minutes later. And not have to just scream it out at each other until it's done. It's like taking a moment.
And not from a therapeutic angle, but from a health angle too, because like when you stress out your brain, bro, you are literally taking life off of you.
So,
so like,
you don't even want to know how many decisions that I have made in my life because I was so quick to anger and I didn't want to think about it, and because it's a protective mechanism, right? It's what I've learned as a child. Like, you get angry immediately, you shut down the situation, because I'm like, this is, you know, not just me personally, this is everyone who experiences anger in an extreme degree. Is like, when someone, think about yourself, right? When you're in a situation with someone, let's say all three of us are here and Bailey starts to get angry at us and starts yelling at us. Instantly, he owns the situation, right? Great, perfect. Maybe that made him feel good at the moment, but later on when he has to come back and talk to both of us, we're both going to be like, well, you were an asshole, so I don't know what you want from me, right? Which ultimately then, the anger, you're actually losing control of the situation. But when you can stop and go, actually, let's talk about this properly, you then get control of the situation.
And the other thing is, like, when you are angry, it makes you powerless, because it tells the other person that they have control over your.
Oh yeah, exactly.
emotion. Like, look
And it
what I
just makes people uncomfortable. Nobody wants to
Yeah.
deal with you. They're just like, "Okay, whatever, dude. Like, just go away.
Yeah.
We're done. Get angry
That's why-
somewhere else."
That's why, like, it's cool that your therapist is saying that, because then, like, I guess I've been sort of doing it kind of right, because like over the last couple of years I've been like detaching
Yeah.
myself from situations and then going back a couple of days later and then looking at it from a new lens and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's cool that to say that.
Actually, yeah. So while we're talking about this, before we move on to another topic, as
Yes.
part of my sessions, I had to purchase a book, and I recommend, if you're not ready to go to therapy yet, Raza, I recommend it's a book called Mind Over Mood, right? And it gives you a bunch of exercises that are like, they're designed by therapists and psychotherapists. It's designed to help you navigate your emotions, either
Right.
in conjunction with therapy or on your own. And I've recommended it to a couple friends, and they've decided to purchase it and use it and start some of the practices in the book. And like, they're even noticing small changes in their own minds from working with that book. And I recommend, so if anybody's listening and you're a part of this and you think that any of this stuff is something that relates to you, Mind Over Mood. Recommend, must get. It's very cheap for the information it gives you. Yeah.
I gonna say, yeah, like, and okay, yeah, that and that's the other thing. I think access to therapy is another.
I can help you out with that after the show.
Oh no! It's just like in general. I'm talking about
in general. Well, because that's the same like cultural talk, right? Access to therapy ties into that heavily, depending on your area, socioeconomically, all that. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
I appreciate what you guys are saying, but that's not what I'm talking about at all. It's just like I told Bailey about this, but like, we Canadians pride ourselves with our universal health care, right? We have everything. It's free for us. We can go to a hospital, we won't get charged. But isn't it ironic that we go to a therapist in a country with free health care and we're paying for it? I think we shouldn't, because our mental health is just as important. Because it's a part of us. So like, anything a part of us should be in our healthcare thing. That's my thing. It should be free.
I can help you with that.
And then actually, my mom can hook you up there. And then at the same time, though, can I get really dark with it?
Okay.
All right.
If our society's not willing to recognize that, like, universally you should cover, like, feminine hygiene products, then, like, I highly doubt they're willing to acknowledge that mental health is a priority, you know?
Didn't the province make it free just recently?
No.
Not this province.
Yeah, not this one, because
Scotland was the most recent, like, country or nation state.
I think UK too did something like that. But don't quote me. Could be wrong.
On this podcast, I'll tell you this right now. We are never giving the Brits a good name. All right?
Oh, okay.
Except Scottish. Right? The Scottish are the good ones.
The Scottish and the Irish. Both.
There you go. The Scottish and the Irish get a pass.
The Irish are pro. The Irish are pro the Palestine.
Okay, I gotcha.
So. If they weren't, we'd have a different discussion. But it's just what it is.
Right.
The only therapy I went to, I actually did go to therapy, was speech therapy. And like, it sort of helped, but like, it sort of didn't.
I had to do a bit of that. And it's weird, man. Like, just did you have to do like the repeating all the like vowels and shit? Like, they make you say really weird sentences.
At the beginning, and then I played games and stuff. I played a board with him. I learned a risk at speech therapy, so.
Ooh, fun.
Like, that's one I have stuck in my brain. They made me like chant this shit every day in speech therapy. Was AEIOU a bag of sugar, because then you're saying like every syllable in the English language.
Yeah.
And it was like, I had to say that like 10 times over at the beginning of every class, and it's just burned in my fucking brain.
Driving nuts.
So I did like the fact that because the pandemic and mental health and therapy sort of go yin and yang, because it does make sense.
Yeah.
We're in the house for so long with little to no social interactions, the same, and we have the same pattern every day. It sort of makes us go a little loony, right?
Yeah.
But now, so stay on the Rona. I would like to go and say, will society change? Will it? What will happen? Will you guys be wearing masks once the mask mandate end?
Right.
Sorry. Sorry.
Those
I
are
think
two questions.
it's
Can we
hard,
start with the
yeah.
society? Can we start with the society part?
Okay. So the first thing is, do you think society will learn to because okay, let me add some context to this.
Yeah.
This pandemic, I don't know about you, but for a lot of people, it's actually taught them how to to be different, to self-learning, to get more in depth with themselves, and in turn treat people differently. So if you were trying to be good, you'll go out of this pandemic being a good person, right? So do you think people will be more calmer after this pandemic is over, or is it going to be the status quo?
No, I don't think they're gonna be calmer
All right.
at all.
Mhm.
I think but see, like, the reason why I can comfortably say that is because the second non-essential stores were allowed to open, there was extremely long lines at stores where there's no reason to be extremely long lines. We have learned, as a society of people, we have learned nothing. We
Yeah.
have just continued with our consumerism, and we have learned nothing at all.
Can
That's
I
true.
hop on this train, please, for a second? I thought I
Yes,
was
you're
alone in
flashing
this.
your
It is your
eyes.
turn, though.
Yeah.
It is your turn.
Okay. Just because I'm on like Bloor Street, like a main street in Toronto, for anyone who's not from here, like there's bars galore. And that day, I went on that vacation last week. I came back. I actually missed the notice that we were opening up. I found out the day before. I was like, cool, all right, whatever. Timing. I don't hate on the restaurants getting ready for this shit. But holy fuck, bro. I walked out on the street. It's gross. I just couldn't help, like, is this what we waited for? Like, we just waited so that we could just pay fucking $50 to get a beer? Like, is that it? It's just so that we could pay more money to have drinks with our friends? Like, I get the socializing. The parks make a lot of sense to me. Like, I'm fine with that. It irks me, but at least you're going to the park, you're hanging out with your friends. But, like, is that really it? We all waited just to rush to spend like $80 on drinks. Like,
Yeah.
Listen, I saw a
that it?
TikTok. Yeah, I saw a TikTok of a guy
Like that.
who waited in line for almost 3 hours for Winners, and all that they bought was a candle and a pair of socks. What about that is even remotely, even non, like, what about that is necessary, like, literally at all?
Yeah,
Bro,
I get it.
Get your
yeah.
socks on Amazon. I mean, I understand wanting to go to a store and shop. Don't get me wrong. Like, there's some things that I actually genuinely need. I do not have any sandals, and I need sandals. I cannot wear sneakers all winter. It's not gonna, or all summer. Sorry, it's not
I was
gonna
gonna
work.
say,
for
what
me.
is wrong with you?
Right. But anyways, it's not going to work for me. I need something to wear on my feet for when I, like, walk the dog or go in the yard. And it's like, I am not going to line up for 2.5 hours to maybe find a pair of sandals that fit me. Like, I'm not doing that. And it's ridiculous. Like, there are parents who need to take their children for clothes. They need to get clothes for their children. Like, that's something that's important to them. But it's like, on top of the fact that there's these long lines of people waiting to buy a candle and a pair of socks, right?
Yeah.
It's not like it's just one person going for the entire family. I waited in the line at the dollar store to get, remind you, essential things from the dollar store, not non-essential, essential things that I actually needed. I waited in line for an hour behind a family of 4 people, and they all went in, and there's a whole lineup of people that are all single people waiting to go in the store, and a family you needed to bring your husband, your wife, your kids. You guys all needed to go to the dollar store on, like, the second day it's been open. I'm sorry.
Here in my hometown, it was the other way around. Oh no, it actually wasn't. It was pretty much on par.
Yeah.
It was basically Walmart, Walmart, all those stores that were open up during it. No line, people weren't going to them. But hey Bailey, can I name drop a brand on here without being sued?
I think so.
All right.
Well, you're just talking about a store. It should be fine.
Yeah, that should be fine.
Okay. So like Ritman's, like, Ritman's Winners.
You can do that type of stuff, yeah.
Softmock, Roots, all those random stores that don't really sell essential stuff had like lineups around the corner and stuff.
Around the plazas. It's
Or
so
plaza, yeah.
dumb.
I know.
So like
So
I'm not even fully dark with it. It doesn't make me fully sad, but it was just seeing all that shit was like, I am really in the minority of all of this. Like, I'm really like, I like going out. I love going to bars and having fun, but it's like, I really don't want this the same that everyone else does. Is what it really glaringly showed me.
We have not played pool in almost 2 years at this point. And like the possibility of being able to play pool again, I don't know when that's going to happen. And that was something that like was important to me. I enjoyed that. It was fun to go and have a couple drinks with my friend and play some pool. And now it's like, I don't think that's going to be a possibility for a very long time, because there is no way on this earth I'm going to stand in line for 3 hours to play pool and have a $10 beer. It's not happening.
And touch a pool stick and a pool table that 100 other people touched. Like, that's
correct.
I wonder how
like, I'm not even once
that.
things. Yeah, because that's even once things open up, even once we all got our second shots, it's like, do I particularly want to go to the pool hall? Like Raza's second, this is a good segue. Raza's second question was, are people still going to wear masks and all that, right? Like,
right.
Cool, we can go to the bar now. Like, I don't know if I want to go to the pool hall, or like, when do I feel cozy going to the gym again? Like, I don't know.
Right.
So has this pandemic made you kind of more paranoid with your surroundings?
It's made me less trustworthy of the people around me because of specific events where people traveled and then thought the very next day they got home they were going to come and get a haircut in a small salon and cough all over people. That's where it's made me paranoid. I don't trust people in this world to be responsible for their own lives anymore, because they've shown that they're not. Like,
and
I'm telling you,
pandemic, right?
Right, and I'm telling you now, if I get sick, like if I even get, knock on get like a common cold, I'm 100% gonna wear a mask until my cold is gone. Mostly because like I'm gonna learn from this pandemic that if I wear my mask while I'm sick, I can help other people not catch my issue, right? And it's like, I heard someone saying this the other day where they're like, raise your hand if you're one of the few people that followed the rules, self-isolated, kept a small circle, wore your mask when you went out, and didn't even get so much as a common fucking cold. My hand's up, bro. I didn't. I stayed home. I wore my mask. I did minimal out. I only saw a couple friends. Like, I was very careful about what I did, and I have not gotten sick.
Pretty much the same thing.
Look at our own show. We're here recording remotely, and there's mad fucking... Every other podcast on the internet has already gotten back in the seats together, even if they're Canadian. It's like...
Right.
Yours maybe, but not mine, because mine are more responsible.
Good. I'm happy to hear that, though. That's a good thing. Because that's what, on the same lane as Wine Mom, that's what it kind of like freaked. It was a big reminder of like both my point and Wine Mom's point of like, oh, this is like, a lot of people really don't think the same as me.
Yeah.
Right. Like when the pandemic first happened, and this was before they actually like decided to close salons, right? This is before they were like, let's close the salons. I think we were open for like 2 weeks during the beginning of the pandemic, and like appointments were canceling like every day. People were like, yeah, we're gonna cancel, we're not going out, we're scared. I had a client come back on a flight and call me and say, hey, can we come in for our appointment tomorrow? We just got off a plane last night, but none of us have any symptoms. And it's like, you're willing to come in here with your quote-unquote no symptoms and risk not just the 5 stylists that work here, but our entire clientele of 1,000+ people. You're willing to risk that to come in here to get your fucking haircut? No,
Yeah, like
absolutely not.
my dad, he works in the hotel in the industry, and I think he was
Mhm.
telling me about a week or two ago that even before it opened up, like he had to work at Stony Creek, uh,
Mhm.
the hotel there was jam packed,
Mhm.
and of all, there are people from like, of course, you and I don't care enough. Brampton, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, Brampton. People from that neck of the woods were coming here because they just wanted to have time off. And my
Mhm.
dad is like, was kind of freaking out. Was like, you're not supposed to be here. But his higher ups were like saying it doesn't matter, bring money.
When I was
Yeah.
working in Markham, there was when I was working in Markham, I was working at Markville Mall. The salon was open there. I had left my previous salon and went to a new one.
Mhm.
And when I was there, Toronto salons have been shut down basically at the beginning of the pandemic. They allowed them to open for like 2 weeks before Christmas, basically.
Mhm.
All of the Toronto and other, like downtown Toronto and so on, all those clientele that all their salons were currently shut down, they were all coming out to Markham. So it's like, nobody
Yeah,
learned anything. You're in a
exactly.
hotspot and you're traveling to a place that doesn't currently have a hotspot, and you're creating
A
a
hotspot,
hotspot. Like
which is what
there was a
happened here
store,
in
right?
Niagara
There was
Falls.
a
It happened here.
exactly. There was a
Yeah.
store like once a week. There was a store in the mall that was shut down and being completely sanitized because of a case contact. It's
Oh,
like,
Jesus
you're
Christ! Yeah.
stupid. Like it's literally like, don't just don't. Is it your area? Stay in your area.
Well,
Like our city, our like I read the stats like a couple of weeks ago, but like the reason why we have like people are being like infected here is not from, what's the term, local or local,
It's
like
not from local. It's global.
local.
It's people coming
Well,
in.
like it's from, let's say, like in other cities. So like
Right.
9 times out of 10, our cases are coming from Toronto, and people like my dad were like, "Why aren't they telling them to stop coming? Our cases are clearly going up." And stuff.
Mm-hmm.
and that's the.
Sorry, Bailey.
No, no, nothing to apologize. It's just That's what's scaring me about getting too rhetoric-y about being a leftist, thinking that we should still be locked down. Is at the very least we're
Yeah,
going about all of this too fast. Like at the very least,
Yeah.
that's the
like
issue.
why aren't you thinking of the weird to combine the two lanes of thought?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to the bar to have a beer with your homie. I sincerely relate to that. But, like, why are people not considering the fact that it's like, I'm going there with, like, literally 50 other people that are
Right.
feeling the same way? And
But
Right.
Bailey, stores have capacities now, so it's all safe, Bailey. It's all safe, Bailey.
my neighbors were having a party 2 weeks ago, and I'm not going to snitch to the cops or nothing, but it was, like, I was really uncomfortable. I didn't like it. There was at least 15 people went in and out the alleyway that I go to, and it's like,
Oh, Jesus.
I'm
when
gonna
partying is
hope that it's
smoking-
okay because the science says now that it doesn't cling to surfaces. But that's like 15 people. I have no fucking clue who they are going in and out the same place I gotta go in and out. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right. Well, it's not even so much about being too left or too right or whatever on any topic. It's about being like being a fucking human being. That's, for me, that's what it's about. Like, I would absolutely love to go to a patio with my girlfriend. We used to go all the time. Like I just said a minute ago, me and Bailey used to go and play pool. Those things are not an option for us anymore. And like, that's not fair, like, because it's not realistic to wait in lines. And like, a lot of people are starting to recognize this, and they're like, I don't want to wait in lines forever to like spend an absurd amount of money on a beer and all these things. And it's like, at the end of the day, I'm sympathetic to these restaurants because the government fucked them. That is what that is. That is the reality. I don't care what anyone says, whatever argument you want, the government fucked them. So I'm sympathetic for them. But at the same time, like, this is why we ended up locking back down last summer, because we just got so excited and we went overkill. And we're doing it again.
Blam.
We are literally
Right.
100%.
Legit doing it again.
And
Like,
and I can keep. Can I add one personal Rona?
I don't have a
rant?
point. I don't have a point.
Mhm.
Go,
I've
go,
got
go.
one. The new phases for Canada, Ontario specifically.
Mm-hmm.
I was not all of these anti-maskers, the conspiracy theorists.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really uncomfortable because the new guidelines for us are literally based off of like percentage vaccinated. And
Yeah.
like
Yeah, which is so stupid.
that for me, you're giving them way more fuel, and me even as like a liberal person, I don't think that's fair. Like I don't think that's fair. You can't say, well, 70% of you sheeple need to take this needle. It's supposed to be about case percentages and proper policies and the government doing
Right.
their job, not, oh, this many of you need to take this shot. It's about like, what are you doing, Mr. Government? Like, why the
Right.
fuck is it based on how many of us made the choice to take your needle? I'm so confused and uncomfortable with how this is set up now, based on the idea of like,
Right.
okay, yeah, all right, yeah, 70% of the population needs to take this shot.
Cool.
I personally think that's the right idea, but that's fucked to make it the benchmark.
Well, because we're playing roulette then, basically, with the people who would prefer to be anti-vax. That's what we're doing. We're like, who can wait it out the longest is pretty much what we're doing.
Yeah.
Right? Because eventually, like, the government's not gonna have a choice. What are you gonna do? Like, literally go to their homes and make them take it? Or are you gonna just say fuck it and open up? Like, that's the thing. And it's like, it just makes me sad because it's like, they are the ones who, if you're not gonna follow the guidelines, like, you're the ones that are at risk, and then like you put people in your lives at risk.
I think it's a vicious cycle, like, because like when things open up, when things lock down, the anti-maskers go nuts and they start bringing out the conspiracy theories, and then things start to slowly open up, or cases numbers go down, things open up, and then all of a sudden our cases number goes up, but then the conspiracy theories are saying just keep it open and stuff.
We're shocked that the numbers went up, considering that we didn't follow the guidelines and partied all night. We're shocked. Oh my goodness, this is a government conspiracy. Like, really? Like, you know how like one thing happens and creates another thing, right? Like when you drink water, you have to pee. So if you don't follow the rules, we're not going to get more freedoms. Like, that's how that works. Like, we know that, right? Like,
and that's
we're
the
not
other thing.
Children.
And that's the other thing. A lot of Canadians think, I love our country. I love the intelligence of the average Canadian. It's like the best thing. Apparently, guys, I have no idea, and I'm sure y'all have no idea. Canada is a communist a country. I didn't know that.
I knew. My family's been telling me. Telling me.
Wait, sorry, can you repeat?
Canada is a communist country, is what a lot of these people are saying, when it's not really. Go live in
live in a communist country and try again.
Go live in North Korea and see what happens. It's just people, I don't want to say who, but it's certain Caucasian people want to be oppressed so bad that they make up the boogeyman in their head. Sorry, but that's
Trudeau isn't my favorite person. He's not a great liberal. The Canadian president is not a great liberal human, but
Prime Minister.
Sorry, I see.
Well, to dumb it down.
Thank you. To dumb it down. That's why I'm trying to keep it dumbed down.
Just to make it easy for people to understand.
You uncultured Americans, we have a president, a prime minister of Canada.
A prime minister.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's
no, but your point is valid.
Yeah, it's like, even though I'm not liberal, I'm still sitting there thinking the same thing of like, what the fuck? Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Oh, you are?
It's
okay.
like, well, I've just reached the point where it's like, yes, I have sympathy for people who are in leadership, because a lot of the times, like, this is something they've never dealt with before. But we're almost a year and a half into this. At what point are you going to start to understand how to deal with this? Like, you had enough time, you've seen the cause and reaction for things that you say and do. Like, you need to put your foot down and, like, stick to something. Stop changing it every time you feel sad that somebody's mad at you.
If I may, I got my one point and then Raza go, is because we're sitting here doing a podcast on the internet as three fuckwads with minimal college degrees. And we can identify
Dude, Wine Mom is the only one who actually has understanding about the world.
There you go. So. Wine Mom is the genius here. So,
oh God.
It's all this shit. If we can identify these problems, that's what's frustrating me with our quote-unquote liberal government that we have, because we're identifying like these things are dividing people. Like, there's radicalism starting. There's hate groups starting because of this shit. And they're doing nothing. And they're just letting it happen.
It's just sad. Like, I'm so done with, like, it being about political views. Like, it's not about political views. Sorry, Raza, I beat you to it. It's not about political views anymore. It's about human rights, and it's about human life, and it's about the possibility of a future. And it's like, the true reality is that if you don't want to think about this pandemic has been severely dwindling the population. And if you want to sit there and go, oh, that's great, that's so wonderful. Okay, wait until when this is done. And, like, we're out of the clear and you actually look at the damage that has been done. You know? Yeah. So it's all fine now to be like, oh, conspiracies, oh, political views, oh, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, at the end of the day, I respect whatever political view you have. That's your opinion. You're entitled to it. Sometimes you're wrong, whatever, right? Yeah. But it's about human issues. Like, it sucks. Like, I feel horrible for children who don't get to experience high schools and, you know, junior schools the same ways that we did. You know, like, a lot of the kids, like my cousins specifically, they're in high school right now, and they're working from home at a computer in their bedrooms. When I was in high school, like, I was fucking around, I was hanging out with skateboarders, or I was smoking pot behind the school, or whatever bullshit I was doing. And, like, they have to miss out on all of that, and it sucks.
100%. But, like, to the political thing, I think we're in the part of this pandemic where our politicians are trying to win political points, because election season is coming up. For us, it's like next year. For Douglas is on the chopping block, but like they're all trying to win some political points, because just like they know this pandemic will act as a barometer of their success or their failure. So it just.
Oh no, go. It's just what.
Oh, I'm done. I'm done.
Okay. Because I agree with both of you, and to compound both of those, I think they're sitting there trying to win political points. But what scares me is, I think what's on the table for people like us is human rights. What's on the table for the people with money is their ability to make more money, and that's all they care about. And that's what really scares me about the political situation we're in, because there's two different topics on the table. We're literally arguing over two different things. Half of the people are sitting here saying this is about human rights and this is about the population. The other half of the people are saying, no, this is about the economy and keeping our pockets flowing.
Yeah.
All right, because no one's willing to acknowledge that, and we're sitting here arguing over policies and fucking whether we can go into this store or that store. The discussion's never going to be had, and I'm terrified, kind of, about election season.
Yeah, because I think people with extreme views are getting more time now. I'm on fire.
More motivated, Raza, is the word. More motivated. Less likely to not vote, you know? Like, more likely to get out there and try to have their opinions heard. So, just like in the States, where people who didn't care before were, you know, pushed to it thanks to Mr. Trump, it's the same thing that's going to happen here. It's like, just because we are Canada does not mean that our dynamic is any different than the States. It's just a little bit more peaceful, you know what I mean? But we still have extremes here. It's just a matter of, like, people feeling powerful enough to do something about it.
And I was looking at the current polls of in our country. The bar is, like, so low. it's in the Earth's core, that Trudeau could actually win the election because he's the one who's doing the not as bad as the rest. That's how I'll phrase it. He's the one who has, in a class of all Fs, he's the one who has a D plus.
I would just like to go back to memeing Mr. Trudeau instead of like taking him seriously. That would be fun.
Yeah.
It's
It's
like,
just-
this is too much.
I say it endlessly, and these residential school things have brought it to the forefront for like leftist voters or the community that I live in. Is the man's walked in saying like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna give fresh water to Indigenous people. We're gonna respect Indigenous rights.
Yeah.
We're gonna recognize the atrocities we committed." And then we start acknowledging that atrocities were committed, and he's fucking zipped shut. It's like, this was literally your platform.
Not only that, bro, he's suing an Indigenous body who are actually trying to I forget what they were doing, but he's suing like
I think
natives.
I think they were trying to
Yeah.
privately fund scanning a residential school in BC, if I'm correct.
Yeah, he's currently suing that. So like when he's saying all this stuff, you have to look at what he's doing. Like he's like
Right.
lawsuits and lawsuits and stuff. So
That whole thing, like,
it's
it
for another
causes me
podcast.
so much stress. I'm telling
Yeah.
you,
It is for
yeah.
another podcast because we both got personal stories. I'm gonna make a really emotional Instagram post tomorrow about it.
Ugh.
Who-
It's just,
Did you see the new
I
one?
have a.
Yeah,
Sorry.
there's
They
been
discovered
5 new
more.
ones.
Yeah.
There's 5 new
Or
ones.
5
Yeah.
years, sorry.
The big
Well,
one
it's
was
just-
in Manitoba that you're talking about. Sorry, go. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm just, yeah, it's fine.
It's just
too much.
again, Raza, it's another one of those that me and Wine Mom were sitting here and we saw the fucking impacts when we were kids, and it's just so fucked. And I'm sorry to speak for you, Wine Mom. I just feel that I
Yeah.
can presume this safely. It's just so fucked to now see like the whole world going like, oh wow, you guys did that. It's like, what are you saying?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I've seen people's
I know.
lives ruined that I know from all of this shit, and we're debating if it's real. Like,
I
we're
mean,
debating
let's
if
just make it-
happened.
People
Right.
are like,
And it's like-
I see the argument, like, it happened so long ago, move on.
Yeah.
Right?
Which
Like,
it didn't
what?
happen that long ago.
It didn't happen.
There's
that
a
long
thing-
ago.
Jenner's,
You know-
my best friend, both his parents
Let Wine
were
Mom talk.
kidnapped.
Let Wine Mom
Sorry,
talk.
I didn't mean to
No, it's
go
okay.
Wine
It's
Mom.
okay. No. It's okay. It's okay. I was just gonna say, like, with the residential schools and like the time that they were closed, like, I was under the impression that the last one, and this was just based off like what I knew from when I was in school and like when it was talked about at that time, which was fucking barely. Let's just make that clear. That one of the last schools was like closed in like the 70s or 80s, something like that, to find out that
90.
it's actually like 96, I think it was. And it's like, so if
shit.
even so, let's just say this, even if the last school was closed in the 70s, okay, my mother was born in the 70s, which means my grandmother is the age of somebody who would have been kidnapped and brought into a residential school. And guess what is so important about that specific knowledge is that those people who were forced to attend those schools are now raising the generation that is raising our generation. They raised the generation that has raised our generation. So do not tell me it was a very long time. Because it's your fucking grandmother and it's your fucking grandfather, and guess what? It might even be your fucking mom's. Okay? So people being like, "Oh, it's so far removed," like, no, it's not. No, it's not. No,
It's
it is
ingrained-
absolutely not.
And that's what I saw too. Okay, like my first babysitter, my very first babysitter was a victim of residential schools. The man had to go to prison for first-degree murders, and it's like unfortunate that this man committed severe crimes, but like when you're considering what the impact that these residential schools caused, it's like you can't really put it on someone who is stripped of their complete identity.
Well, it's like, how can we recognize, right? Like, let me just bring. How
Religion,
can we
bro.
as a society recognize that a white person raised by an alcoholic father or an alcoholic mother may have some sort of mental stress, correct? We can recognize that, right?
Yeah.
Why is it that we can't recognize that emotional trauma of being ripped from your families, your culture, your life, everything that you've known as a child could result in so much trauma that's why a lot of, you know, addiction issues can happen in that community, and then look at the young people that are being raised by those things and go, oh, well, they just need to get over it. No. We need to look at the fact that, like, there's emotional and generational trauma that is being retaught to generations, and we're just allowing it to move forward. We allow no resources. We don't care about anything. I mean, even just in my true crime community that I'm passionate about, like, the Highway of Tears, like, we know that at that time, for very many years, even up until the mid 2000s, that Native women were significantly more likely to be victims and never looked for. So, like, don't tell me that these people are just saying things to say them, because that's not what's happening. The evidence is there for you. So dumb. I can't even, like...
It's another one of those issues that are just further removed from the upper class, such as all our other societal issues, right? Like, as soon as you
Not
have money...
just that, bro. It's racist as well, because it's just like if you look at it, you won't care if it's in a country like Canada and the States, right? You don't really care if it's anything other than a white person, and then a white dude, right? So, like, everybody else is sort of like pushed off to the side. So for this residential stuff, like, I hate to say this, but it will go swept under the rug. It's because it unless it happens to, you know, white people, nothing will change. And I'm sorry to say that, but, like, from my experience, like, that's what I see.
But it's the core of the truth, though, Raza. Is the reality is like, and this is why I struggle a lot with talking about any sort of race issues, not just with the Native community, with the Black community, with the Indian community, with all communities. It's hard for me to talk about race issues, right? Because it feels like capitalizing on something. Because the reality is how much does this genuinely affect my generation and my life of my own, like, you know, the race of people that I am. Right? It doesn't, because it's not my family trauma to talk about, right? Which is, it's such a struggle for me. And this is why I say, like, the only reason why I ever talk about this stuff is because the reality is like, you can't live in a society and expect, like, those people would care for you, but you don't want to care for them. You know? It's so gross. It's so gross, but it's a struggle for me to talk about these topics, just because I feel like it does feel like capitalizing, and it feels like I'm not educated enough, and it's like I always struggle with the point of, like, whose voice can I elevate over my own that is gonna say the things that need to be said. That's always where it is for me.
If you need help with that, that's where my day job can help. I can always hook you up with links for that. But that's I do empathize heavily just based on my personal experiences and
like I hear, like, a lot of my friends are like, you, why, mom? And they're like, oh, this race thing, I'm really uncomfortable with talking to you or talking about it. I'm just like, well, you shouldn't be, because it's like, if you are comfortable with talking about it, well, no, not you, but like, to my friends, then they're saying they don't want to change anything. They're like, if we don't talk about it, how can we change, right?
Right.
So like, and then Bailey and you included, I've noticed when you guys talk about race, it's coming from people need to understand the context of what you're saying, and 9 times out of 10, a person, like a POC, will understand what context you're coming from, because of how you say it, and the way you're explaining yourself, and like that's why I feel comfortable saying between you two that F the white man and stuff, but not really. But.
Well, because I think it's important just to be able to understand, because it's like, yes, there is that conversation of like, fuck white people, fuck the white man. I get it. I hear it. I understand what you're saying. But what people need to understand is like, that's not actually what they're saying. They're saying like, fuck the institution that has continued to suppress their communities. It's the same conversation we had months ago when we were talking about defunding the police. It's not in the context that people are taking it as. We're using literal wording or verbiage, whatever the fuck you want to call it, in order to trigger people to respond. But it's like, you need to actually understand what the argument is that's coming out of these communities. And it's, you can clearly tell that people are not doing that.
And why is because they're scared to admit of what you pointed out at the start. And this is why it's hard when conspiracy theories have been associated with like the fucking fascist dickwads. Because it seems like a conspiracy. They were running it till the 90s. Like, till the 90s. They were objectifying a minority population. In Canada, we sit here on a throne looking down on the States. Like, oh, you guys had slaves. It's like, no, you were objectifying your native population under federal guidance until the 90s.
Yeah, it was legal. What the Canadians did to the Japanese, the Germans, it was legal and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was legal, and that's why it's such a scary thing for us to admit, and it's terrifying because we all collectively, not just as white people, as Canadians, need to admit we're just as bad as our neighbors.
Right.
That's why everyone's
there's a lot of things that we are legally allowed to do. Does not mean it's fucking right.
Yeah,
that's
100%.
it. Period.
Like the small cost was legal, and I can't say the whole word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. It was sad. That's how I was introduced to the concept. Not only my babysitter as a kid, my family used to hire workers they would pay to drive them from the residential schools to town to like work on to fucking do catering jobs or to work on the golf course, and they would pay them a fair wage, but they wanted to make sure that they had employment opportunities. It's like that's how I was introduced to this shit, because like, and it's not even sitting on some white knighting shit. It was just my family going like, "Yo, this is fucked. You need to make sure some alternative people get work opportunities."
There's some and I noticed that's a common thing in smaller
communities.
But yeah, like Bailey said, he hit a key word, and it's scared. A lot of my white friends, I'm starting to notice that when I bring up race, they're like, "What the fuck you talking about?" But everyone's racist. You're racist, and I'm thinking you're only saying this out of fear. Is because your views are now considered wrong, and now you can't say certain words or you can't act a certain way because now it makes sense. You can't be a different person, or you can be, but you can't be a different race, right? But like, it's out of fear, and what I'm getting the vibe is that my POCs will start treating white people how white people treated POCs. That's the vibe what I'm getting from them, which is not true. Low key, Raza may, because Raza has an ego problem. But generally speaking, it's just we as a society. I'm pretty sure POCs can. I can speak for some of them and say we just want to move forward, because if we start treating white people the same way white people have treated us, it's just a cycle. Nothing gets solved and stuff. So, and that's how my community looks at it. My family looks at it. I'm low key changing my friends' minds.
Yeah,
like, you don't need to be afraid. Just understand what the hell's going on around.
Right.
That's all you. That's all. Just.
That's very tied to our ignorance talk. Shout out to our stream on Fridays if anyone wants to check that out, of like the ignorance talk of the white person's parents not teaching them that, right?
Exactly.
Like the white person's parents not teaching them that critical difference, and in the end, privilege that they have.
Yeah. But again, the privilege isn't your fault. You are born into it. Yeah, it's not your fault.
Which to a degree, right, which to a degree I can agree with you in the fact that like a lot of people who are born into privilege don't have the opportunity. But I also feel like that's not genuinely true. You know, as myself, like I am a white person, but I live in a very multicultural environment.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I don't look at anybody in my area as different, like colors and races and stuff. Like you know, and this is a very cliche, like white person to say, like I don't see
Yeah.
color.
I don't see
But
race.
for
I
me-
don't see race.
Right. But for me, the reality is like the people that I live with around here, I like regardless of color, like these are people that I have created relationships with, that I know, that I understand, and it's like if you just stop and you take a moment and you try and understand people, your opinion on someone will change drastically.
Yeah.
You know, like it doesn't matter where they come from. Like it really genuinely doesn't. Like look at us. Like we're a bunch of misfits all together here too. And like, you know, we've taken the time to understand each other and get to know each other and create a bond. And it's like I don't know why people are so quick to just pass judgment on someone, because for me it just doesn't feel like I love talking to people. Like when I'm ready to come out of my bubble, I like talking to people and getting to know them and like, you know, creating a bond. And like I love understanding people's histories and where they came from and like their lives and stuff like that. And I don't know why people got to be so dark about it. Like, I only have white friends. Like, okay, you're fucking boring, bro. Like that's what you're saying. That's what you're telling me. You're boring.
I know somebody who said he doesn't have any white friends, or he doesn't have any friends outside of his Desi friend group. I was like, then what experiences are you learning? Then, like, how can you talk to another person with a different skin tone?
Right.
So,
Exactly.
So,
you just have to expand your horizon a little bit, people. It's not scary. People aren't scary.
That's a good way to put it.
But like, I think Bailey can also agree with me on this. But people do not want to talk half the time. They're like very scared, like extra or introverts and stuff. So like, and that's another thing on
right, which I agree with you, and I think that's definitely its own thing. Introversies and stuff like that. But I mean, for me personally, I've been in situations where I've been getting to know someone and they'll say things like, oh, I got into a huge fight with a guy once because he told me that rock music was white people stuff. And I was like, you are so fucking stupid that I never want to fucking talk to you again. Like, what the fuck is white people stuff? It's stuff, bro. Like, you don't get to claim an entire thing, which actually, by the way, didn't come from white people. So nice try, but that's not what that is. Thank you, though. Appreciate.
It's jokes how like, I can't have it's these weird conversations. Like, for some reason, like not every white person, but a lot of them want to feel like this is ours.
Fine, this is ours. Yeah.
We made this and you should be proud of it. But that's coming, like, I believe as a person of color, I'm seeing that more and more because again, I can be wrong about this and I think I am, but like white people in general are losing a sense of identity. Like they are because now mixing people are becoming mixed races. People are having interracial, again, words are hard, interracial marriages. Jesus Christ, Raza. But things like that are more common, where like white people are now looking at that. They're like, oh, I'm getting extinct when you're not at all.
Those entire white countries.
That's that whole history of colonialism, right? Though that's like literally the history of colonialism. That's why it happened, is because the white man had to walk up and show, hey, look how good this railroad looks. Maybe you Chinese people should help me build it while I murder half of y'all. Right? Like that's literally how it went.
It's literally the truth.
I know, but like,
it's just repeating itself, just with a tinge less violence, because we're in a modern society. It's literally the same pattern, but because we're all watching each other and can hold each other accountable, all the fuckwads in our society can't do what they used to do in the Wild West.
Yes. And they're being afraid of that because times are changing, and they don't and they don't like it that, like, Caucasian people, I'm starting to notice again that it's not about them, right? It isn't about them anymore. It's about everyone else.
Exactly. I mean, like, if you're if you're really that afraid, like, how fucking weak are you?
Exactly.
If you're really that afraid of like our people, like the race of people, like improving in some way, and our genetics getting healthier, and like whatever the case may be, like how fucking weak are you?
I
Like,
know.
if you want to really look into the reality of like why white people, I'm just gonna stop myself.
Well,
We don't need to talk about what it
I'll take
actually
over.
is. Like we know.
So
It's
the white man. Okay.
it ties back to our first convo because it's the exact same thing as like, oh well, you gotta scapegoat it with the kids' mental health is being affected by the pandemic. You know, it's never that the real issue behind the scenes never wants to be addressed. It's, oh, I can't go outside because of this. Oh, I can't go to the restaurant because of this. Oh, it sucks that my kids can't get educated because of the pandemic. It's never owning up to the fact that there may be flaws within the system that you're operating within.
Yeah, it's just like, I'm white. Why aren't I entitled to the things that white people are supposed to be entitled to? Wow.
Well, because white people don't even want the things that they're entitled to. They want the things that other cultures and races are entitled to. That's why. They don't want to be white. They want to take everything from everybody and claim it as white.
100%, because Bailey cooks a chicken or chicken biryani so often to the point where he is gentrified. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's like that.
Right, and that's a big thing too. Is like, I think Bailey can agree with me in the sense is like, when it comes to like food and experiences and life, like I don't eat like, I guess, quote unquote, to traditional white people food, I guess. Like, I'm more interested in experiencing other foods from other cultures. Like, you know, when people say like, how do you live in Toronto? It's horrible. It sucks there. It's stinky. It's dirty. It's like, the population is so high. How do you handle them? Like, have you not seen like the culture that lives here?
Yeah,
like you can literally walk down the street and you can get a really good shawarma, a really good burrito, amazing samosas. Like, you're not getting food like this like out in the boonies or you know what I mean? Like, you're not, unless it's in your home and your family is making it for you, right? Like, you know, like when my friends are like, oh, my mom made a bunch of samosas, like, do you want some? I'm like, please, let me take my money, I need it, give me it. Like, because it's enjoyable to experience those other things. Like, why do you want such a boring flat life? How many fucking lamb chops can you eat, bro? Like,
I mean, lamb chops are pretty fucking fire, I'm not gonna lie. But,
I disagree.
I know you do, but
I think the lamb chops is a good round off. If you've got another pandemic related question to round us off with.
One last one to say that.
Let's get it.
Like, on top of what Wine Mom is saying, just like how like there's so much culture going on where you are, that culture didn't get introduced to us, like to where I am, until like 2013.
Exactly.
When the first sushi restaurant opened up. Stuff. And you know who went there the most? White people did. So it's just, yeah, I'm envious of where you guys live because there's more of my shit there.
Yeah.
I'm envious of
I remember my aunt who lives way up north. The first time she had a shawarma, and like the whole conversation around like having a shawarma and like how great that was. I was like, I eat a shawarma like, I don't know, once a week. Like,
okay, I get it. You live in a better place. I have to go to a different city to get authentic samosas.
Honestly,
a 20-minute drive. So I was like, fuck this noise. Mom, make them.
True.
I feel you on
but anyways,
that.
That's my roundup.
That's the roundup.
Yeah, that's the roundup. All right, I won't go on a personal rant. We'll end it off here then. Thank you, Raza, for making us evaluate our feelings around the Rona.
I feel like every podcast ends on Bailey going personal. So if he wants to go personal, go personal if you want.
I gotta make my personal note. What is my personal?
Do it.
Please eat.
I think.
Well.
Please eat well. Drink more water. And I think as we become more secular through the pandemic, it's important to remember that you shouldn't judge your neighbors based on any conditions. So your neighbor
Yeah.
could be
White.
living in a fucking tent in the park, or your neighbor could be some Arab human who can't really speak English that well. You should still
Hold up.
hook him up.
Go back.
You should still help him
Arab?
out.
Arab?
Arab.
Any
Arab?
person who
Arab,
doesn't
Arab,
speak
Arab. I
Arab.
said it like a Texan. I'm
like
sorry.
a white guy, yeah.
Yeah, I said it like a Texan.
The Taliban, Al Qaeda.
Oh my god.
And if you see any Italians, you better ask them for some pasta sauce. All right.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh.
Thank you for watching. This is Gabagoo. This is Marching into Madness. I'm Bailey. We got Raza. This is Wine Mom here. We record our podcast live on Mondays on Twitch at 7 p.m. and we also stream video games on Fridays. If you want to catch the full version, it's going to be on
At
YouTube.
9
And
p.m.
in about a week, maybe two, you will catch it on straight to your phone. Like we're gonna give you a podcast straight to your head tops. All right. Well, do you have anything to say, Wine Mom?
It's always Wine Mom.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why you didn't trust me. So,
I was gonna give you the clothes, Raza.
no, I had the open. You the close.
No. Just everyone be safe. Consider your travels. Wear your mask. Let's not fuck around anymore, please.
And
I want a
if
life.
you guys, had some amazing samosas, not recipes, just samosas.
Send the link.
Send them. No,
Yeah.
just if you make samosas, send them to me. I will drop my home address, and I will not get doxxed. I
Stop.
trust you guys enough
If
to not
you
do that to
can
me.
score us a samosa reviewing YouTube series, I will be
Oh my
eternally
God, I
grateful
wish.
to you for the rest of my life.
All right, I got you, fam.
Like
I was
I think that
seriously
yeah,
oh,
the
yum.
three of us we can do samosa mukbangs. Oh,
Okay,
oh my
you
God!
gotta make
We
all
could
my
do like
ASMR,
We could do
right?
like Pakistani samosa mukbang. We could do like Indian samosa mukbang. We could do like Guyanese. We could go through the whole.
Really?
I might die.
Let's do it.
Petrify everything.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, okay. We're going to let's
Oh,
chat,
you-
and then Bailey's got to pee. Bailey's got to pee again.